Welcome to Mediascape, Insights from Digital Changemakers, a speaker series and podcast brought to you by USC Annenberg's Digital Media Management program. Join us as we unlock the secrets to success in an increasingly digital world.
I have an expert in the digital space today, which everybody who comes on the show is an expert in their own way. But Jarrod Lopiccolo is truly an expert. In fact, his company, Noble Studios, won Inc. magazine's Best in Business for Advertising in 2023. Jarrod, first of all, congratulations. And I'd love to hear, what is one trend that you see happening right now in advertising?
First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I think this is my second time coming back, and we just have such a great chemistry. So I'm really excited to get into conversation. I think when I think about trends that are happening, right, post-pandemic, all of us have been under a lot of pressure. We've, had to navigate schools, doing, work from schools to remote work from home. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing is this need for deeper, more meaningful connections with other people, and so our team, one of the reasons why we won that award is not just because of the work we produce, but it's the culture that we foster and the inclusivity that we create by, bringing everyone's perspective in. But I think about, the pressures that are on businesses nowadays. It really does come down to this work-life balance. And I feel like before pandemic, everyone just thought, well, I'm going to just, grind, work 60-hour work weeks and I'll finally, sort of climb the corporate ladder and I'll get the raises and I'll make the money I need to. And then I can have the life that I want. And I think that what we're seeing now is that you can do both, right? You can have the work and you can have the life, and you don't have to wait the 10 years and do the heavy grind. But I think what we as employers want to see is people bringing their whole selves to work. Right? And bring us your entire self, bring all your emotions, bring everything. We might not be able to fix all of those things if there's problems that maybe don't relate to us, but by knowing them and by being vulnerable, and we're being vulnerable, we can effectively create the best environment for you to unlock your best version of yourself. And so I think that's a big thing is this work-life balance is been needed for a long time. And I think employers need to, understand that it's okay that people don't need to work these 60-hour work weeks. You can get the production you need in the 40-hour work week or even less, so there's a trend that's happening around the 4-day work week, and we see that. And all of those are around, again, supporting that work-life balance. And so I think it's important that both the employer and the team, or the team member or the employee, they kind of meet halfway. And so, I think that's one of the biggest trends that I'm seeing from the workplace.
I love that. There's so much we're going to talk to that issue, right?
Yes.
Because I don't think that all employers are where you are. And
right.
So I can see it's very clear why you would win this type of award. And for those who are listening and wondering, Jarrod was a guest on Your Brand Amplified and was such an amazing expert and person that I said, okay, you have to come on to the USC podcast because I know you have a lot to share with our audience and students at USC. So, but Jarrod, you didn't start out in digital. You started out in architecture.
Yeah.
And you found your way in. So will you talk about that? Because I know that for a lot of my students, certainly some of them are in digital.
Yep.
But many of them, this is the first time. I mean, I have an older student, probably in her 60s, who works for the government and is based in Guantanamo Bay and just learning digital for the first time.
Yes.
All of this is new to her.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think what I love about the education process is that it's the exposure to new ideas and new things, right? So yes, I was set to be an architect. And I think probably many of you that are listening, probably are like, well, I think this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And then I realized once I got into the workforce and I was working for this architecture firm, and instead of just designing buildings, they were designing the digital touch points that these people were going to experience before coming into the restaurant or the big, university that we were designing. And that exposed me to the digital virtual sort of architecture as opposed to the physical architecture. And that all of a sudden kicked off and gave me an option. It said, well, you can go this way, left, and that's digital marketing, or you can go to the right, which is more physical architecture and design, both kind of rooted in similar principles.
Right.
So I would just encourage anyone out there, by putting yourself out there, and that's what's so nice about the education system, is that it does expose you to so many different things, but you have to put yourself out there. So whether you're 18, fresh out of high school, or you're 60 and you're kind of re-careering or looking at, another career path by means, getting yourself into those environments really does set you up for opportunity.
Yeah. I love the way that you talk about that, because architecture, building is about the user experience.
Yes.
Digital framework is about user interface and user experience. So how are people walking into buildings? Are we making them ADA compliant? The same thing now applies. I saw a LinkedIn post of yours from a week ago that people are still not being as compliant as they should be with our websites and with our digital footprints. And you and I talked about that a little bit before we got on, how inclusion is so important in the digital landscape, not just the physical landscape.
Yes.
So you woven this intentionality into everything you've done, and moving from architecture to the digital world. You've had some really great successes, not just best in business, but with relocating, with the world of remote work, with working with major companies. So will you talk a little bit about what that journey started looking like at the beginning and how it's shifted for you and your family now?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it, the family now, like, Season, my partner, she is our chief operating officer. I'm the chief executive officer. So she really works sort of back of the house, right? Working in terms of like culture, team members, HR, legal, finance, benefits, office. I'm very front of the house, if you will. So it's visionary, service lines, geographical locations, types of clients that we want to go after, industries we want to be thought leaders and specialists in. But yeah, you're right. We've now been in business for 20 years. I don't know if we would have thought that we would be where we are today. And so I think part of it is back to one, bringing your whole self to work. We constantly would bring ourselves, and, her being a copywriter, me being a designer, those are our kind of original trades persons, tools and crafts, that we could bring to the world. Now we're business people, right? We sort of evolved into these different roles to serve our team members, right? To serve our clients. But yeah, I mean, when you first start anything, whether you're, coming straight out of college and you're working for someone, or you want to start your own business, I think it's important to keep your knees bent, constantly looking for new opportunities, testing out what the demand is in the market, and then sort of filling that demand and making sure you're passionate about it as well, right? I think at the end of the day, a lot of people will want to chase money, and it's hard to do that. I mean, we were totally given opportunities that were very, money focused, and we thought, well, that doesn't align with our passion, and will we feel good to do that? And so anyone that is listening, it's follow your passions, and then money will show up. It just naturally does. Yeah. It might not be how you think it's going to show up when you first follow that passion, but it will show up one way or the other. And so I think we did that, right? We sort of followed our passion. We started with just digital marketing, sort of building web infrastructure. You talk a lot about user experience. That was what our value was. We were considered subject matter experts when it came to user experience. Now we've got, 3 different offices. We've got 75 employees worldwide. We've got all the different service lines. So we not only build web experiences like websites or microsites, but we also are, extending brands and creating brands from the ground up. We're also doing a lot of performance marketing. So SEO, SEM, CRO, A/B testing, all those things. But none of that we would have sort of gotten into if we'd not followed our passion, kept our knees bent, looked at the world as, there's opportunities that exist around the corner. So that's what I would say is most people's journeys, when you get to the end of that journey or in the middle of it, you look back and you're like, wow, I don't know all these little micro decisions that I make along the way. I don't know if I would have ended where I currently am today. So that's why I would just encourage people is follow that passion. You'll find that journey continues to change, and it's not about that end. They say it right. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And then you get the destination at the end. So
yeah, I never would have guessed 4 or 5 years ago that I would be podcasting full time and teaching. Right. I didn't know that those were paths that were open to me in the way that they are now.
Yes.
So I am going to +1 that completely. Yeah. You talk about these different offices. You talk about turning down projects because they didn't resonate. So can we back up a little bit and talk about when you and Season, because you met on the, you were dating.
At university. Yeah.
At university. You worked on these projects together, and you said, wow, let's start a company together, which kudos.
Yeah. Thank you.
That you have that strength and partnership. That is such a great foundation, not just obviously for your relationship, but also for building a company. And then you were very intentional, right? And you talked about your passions. So what did you weave in from the beginning? What kind of projects did you decide you were passionate about, or how has that evolved?
Yeah. It started with kind of earlier, we talked about work-life balance. And, as an entrepreneur or a leader, you tend to bring everything to the table. And what you find is that you have, many cups, like all of us that are listening, you have these cups, like one might be your personal health, one might be your friends and family, one might be your passion and your future work or the current work you're doing. And it's important that you kind of fill each cup up equally, because what happens is if you just invest in one, you naturally, the others, start to deplete. And then you find yourself in a moment of imbalance. And a lot of us feel that when we overinvest into one category of our life over the other. And so early days, what I found was that Season and I, there was this moment, and those that are listening, I want to really paint a picture for everyone. It was a Friday night, it was December 5th, 2008. So I can remember the exact date. And there's what's called the tree lighting ceremony. And we were working for a really, really large client, and it was a 5:00 Friday night deadline, which I'm going to tell anyone out there, don't have a deadline on Friday night at 5:00. But it was a really large company, Autodesk. They're a massive 2D, 3D software company, Fortune 100. And we're sitting there, and Season, she went to the daycare real quick to pick up our kids, because this tree lighting ceremony is when Santa comes down the main drag. And as he comes down in his sleigh, all the lights turn on, like boom, 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 as he comes down. And then the whole trees light up and the whole town is there. Everyone's together. There's all the kind of singing and, Christmas music and holiday music and stuff. And we've done this as a tradition every year. And she comes back to the office and grabs the kids real quick and says, okay, it's time to go. And my son is like 6 or 5 at the time. And, daughter's like 3 to 4. And she's like, okay, let's go. I just turned to her and I said, I can't, this deadline, we're not hitting the deadline. And quietly, she kind of turned around and she walked out with the kids. And here I was, just like with my heart in my hands, thinking, what am I doing? I'm choosing work over business, this work-life balance. I'm not balanced right now. Like I'm putting too much in the cup of work.
Right.
And my team members look to me and they say, Jarrod, what are you doing? Like, get out of here. We've got this. We've got this. Like, don't worry. And I had to let it go. Right. And a lot of us don't realize, like, it's like sometimes we just can't do everything and we just have to let it go. And so I did. I let it go. I went out there. I made it just in time for Santa to come and turn all the lights on in the city, and everyone cheered. And my wife, when I showed up, she's crying because, she didn't think I was going to make it. I start crying. I'm going to start crying right now, actually, but I guess my point in all of this story is that, like, you will have to make decisions along your career path to choose work and or to choose personal time or to choose something else. And I think it's important that you constantly live a life of balanced, and making sure, again, you're still bringing your whole self to work, but you have to make sure that you're balancing that. And then once you have a balanced life perspective, then you can start picking the projects you want to pick, and you can start choosing the clients you want to choose, and you can start crafting the time that you want to work. And, and after that, believe it or not, after that time, we said, no more are we working on deadlines on Friday. And in fact, everyone's getting off Friday at 3:00, and so we started saying no one's going to have to be put in the personal position like I was put into. I had to put the team into in that moment of time. And so again, not sure if I answered the question entirely, but that's just something from the heart. It's like people are going to have these experiences and you're never going to remember the time that you gave to work, but you're going to remember the time that you missed that moment for that personal thing that maybe you were imbalanced on.
Yeah. It can be very difficult sometimes. I find for myself that this trying to balance, right? And particularly I'm also a single mom, and then some things can't happen unless it's during the school day, which is also the work day. For instance, my daughter needed her passport renewed. Well, they don't do that in the evenings or weekends. You have to do it. So we had to take her out of school when my ex and I were both in town and take care of that. And it took a little longer. We had to go a little further out to find an appointment, right? But I had to prioritize that.
Yes.
And so it is interesting when you think about your priorities and putting more intentionality. I'm going to take my daughter to volunteer this afternoon.
Yes.
That is something that I can do with her and with a group that we belong to. Now, it's a group not going to belong too much longer, but we're going to continue with our obligation through the school year, right? And then we said, we made a decision that, this doesn't serve us, but we have these other things that we're going to do instead. Yep. So you do have to constantly make these changes and decide how you're going to show up as an employee or as an employer.
Yes.
And it can be difficult to make those decisions and to lean into putting family first, putting culture first. But when you do that, like you said, things start appearing that make it, hey, the finances, that other opportunity that you would have missed out on that is more aligned with your passions and what you want to pursue.
Yeah. And this just got me thinking about, like, people at the end of the day, right, are the variable, right? And when you think about time, I always have this philosophy that time's our only currency, and that you have today to spend it, right? And then tomorrow, that time you decided to spend today, you don't have again tomorrow. You have new time, but that currency of time is spent. And so therefore you want to make sure you're spending it with the right people and doing the right activities. So I'm a big proponent of follow your passions, follow your passions, because it will truly lead to a better life for you. It might not bring you what you want immediately, right? Which is a lot of us are like, we grew up with flat screen TVs in the house and, phones and all these like materialistic items. And so you think, well, in order to maintain that lifestyle, I have to make money. Right. But it'll come. It will come. You promise it'll come. There's money out there. They're in every single form. But you don't want to make money over passion, because you'll one day wake up and you'll say, great, I have the money, I have the things I need, I carried the lifestyle that I maybe grew up with, but I don't have, what I really have, which is my heart. I don't have my heart. I've lost my soul a little bit. And then you find yourself sort of soul searching and, chasing something else. And so I say, bring your whole self, follow your passion, you'll follow that money, but also the people side, be around the right people. Making sure that you evaluate who your friends are, evaluate who, you work with, and making sure that you're around the right people, because people at the end of the day are the variable, right? They're the ones that make a company successful, is the culture and the people. They're the ones that will hurt a company, right? Because if you don't have a good culture, meaning possibly from the leadership side, you haven't cultivated that, you didn't allow people to feel safe, or you didn't allow people to feel vulnerable, you're naturally not going to succeed, right? And if you think, it's no longer the 70s where it's all about profitability, you can get to profitability and you can also have a healthy culture, but you have to invest in the people. And at the end of the day, people quit people. They don't quit companies, right? And so you have to make sure that you are employing the right people, that your leadership team believes in the vision and mission of the company. And then it comes from a bottom up, top down, left, right. Like your company is made by the people. And I'm always reminded by like Martin Luther King's quote, he says, I have a dream. He didn't say I have a plan, right? And I think that's what back to that inspiration, being the leader. I always say I want to be the leader that I want to follow. So I want to make sure that I'm bringing my whole self to work, and then I'm being vulnerable, and I'm, allowing to lead with humility and all those things, because that ultimately is going to attract people. It's going to, keep people close to you. And I think a lot of us are, after the pandemic, have really evaluated who do we hang out with? Like who do we consider our friends, and the ones that we care and share with,
Well, I just really appreciate you saying that, because I think that's the way I teach, and not everybody teaches this way, but I really want to invest in my students.
Yes.
In their whole selves, and recognize where they are, and understand that some people have challenges. You might be attending class virtually and live in Guantanamo Bay,
right,
and be right next to the Haitian crisis and having to deal with that and what could happen at work.
Yes.
And maybe your schoolwork is not going to be top of mind, or you might have another situation happening at work, or you might have gotten a promotion, the same thing. And so I think really meeting people where they are. And to that point, your main headquarters, your first headquarters, right? Reno, Nevada.
Yes.
So you talk about people first. Were you able to find, when you decided to grow, and now you have 75 team members in 3 places. So I want to talk about that. But when you were looking to build your company and grow it, was it people first versus skill set first? Did you find people who were highly skilled in everything you needed in Reno? Or did you find people that fit your culture, that had some skill that you could elevate?
I love talking about this, because naturally, like an entrepreneur today, because they think of time and they want to like advance things so quickly, they want to go right after skill set first.
Right.
And that was not the case for us. We 100% did what you said on the second half, which was like, we wanted to align people that, or be aligned with people that had the same ethos, that had passion. I call it fire in their belly, right? They wanted to be the change agent, and they didn't have to have the experience. They had to have some knowledge of our industry, but we were not looking for the best designer or the best web developer or the best, because you know what? We believe that people can get there. We believe that if you have the right ingredients at the beginning, right, that you are a life learner, that you're curious, that you don't mind taking on the impossible, that you'll find it. In fact, some of the interview questions at the time, now it's sort of so obvious, but 15 years ago, we would ask, where do you go if you don't know something? And if they said Google, we were like, you're hired, and it's only because we knew they were resourceful enough. We knew that there was the answer out there, but you just had to be curious enough to find it and not have it handed over to you. And so that was one of the things we actually called, about 7 years into our business, we formed what was called the Noble University. And it was just basically after hours where team members would teach other team members the skill sets. They would teach them the knowledge and the industry and stuff. And because they didn't have it. It was new. And now everyone's, of course, in digital marketing in some way or the other. We're all content creators or influencers or whatnot. But at the time, there wasn't that. And so we really required people to, like, again, come with passion, come with the mindset that I could be better every day. And that's what we attract. That was the biggest thing we were attracted to. That, and I will say this, there's no room in the world for assholes anymore, And I know that's hard to say out loud, but it just means, like, you can talk through anything. Like, you don't need to bring and be rude or, hurtful to other people to build you up or to protect yourself or not be vulnerable. So we encourage all of our team members today to just bring, again, their whole self to work, be vulnerable, ask questions, ask for advice. Like, we don't want anybody to think they have to know all the answers, because the answers are out there if you're curious enough to want to find them. And so, so nowadays we do have a lot of people that come to us. We're more of a premier agency today. We have really big clients. So we do have to be a little more selective on who comes to work, and they have to have a good portfolio, and they have to show they've been in the industry a lot, because our clients don't often, want to see, sort of new people in the industry on their account, unless we're hiring interns, which we have a great internship program. Then it's really encouraged, right? We bring, hey, this is an intern from this school, and they're working with us. And then all of a sudden the clients just open up because they have empathy. They realize that this person's learning on the job and they're shadowing someone else. But nowadays, our clients, with the budgets they have and the demands they have, we have to have pretty skilled workers that, when they come in. But I would say when we first started, that was not the case. Just found people that aligned with us, and then we helped grow them, and they helped grow us.
Yeah. Talk about your other offices. You're based in Reno, right? But then you also are overseas now.
Yes. So we have an overseas office. We have a Las Vegas office. I was just actually in Vegas 2 days ago. We're in the downtown area of Las Vegas, the old area where Tony Hsieh was creating the container park and the sort of next Silicon Valley, as they say. So we wanted to invest into that sort of art district movement that was happening. And we've got about 13 people down there. And then we have about 15 people in the UK, just right outside of London, in a small town called Bristol. They're about a population of 500. It's actually a university town. So there's 2 universities in that town, which is great because there's lots of positive energy. There's lots of excitement, tons of creativity, innovation. And because we have international clients and we have to serve different time zones, it just made a lot of sense for us to create, an international office. And now we have about 28 independent clients that are over there, and we have a lot of shared clients back and forth. And so we effectively are working 2 different time zones. So Noble is alive, if you will, for 16 hours a day. And it's great. We're affecting the world positively. But what's great is I love to travel. I used to be when I was studying university, I went and studied abroad, which I encourage anyone that's listening, study abroad. Like, put yourself out there, get vulnerable, learn another culture, learn another language. You'll find that that empathy and sympathy you build just makes you a better, person, and it widens your perspective. And talking about inclusivity, really just get to feel the world. But what's cool is that now we have this international office. We created what we call a international travel program, team travel program. And this year we're allowing 10 people from the US to travel over to the UK, and they get to, educate the team members. They get to share, they get to present at universities, talking about what we're doing here in the US versus what we're doing in the UK. And then we have about 5 or so individuals a year that come from the UK to the US. So that helps with like retention and attraction of team members. And it just gives them, we believe in opening people's perspective. And so it gives a more worldly view for everyone.
Amazing. Yeah. Who wouldn't jump at that opportunity to work for a company that is going to give them those opportunities? Let's go back in time to your very first client.
Okay.
What was that like? How did you find your first client? Was it nerve-wracking to start a business in this new world of digital that 20 years ago, it was so vastly different than it is today?
Yeah. So I remember it was Krillman Insurance. It was a small, little, tiny insurance company. I haven't told this story in a long time, which is great. Thank you for bringing it up and allowing me to dig in the archives, if you will. But we came into market and we started, first, I think it's important when you start a business is to put yourself out there, right? Because if you don't have, you can have the best idea in the world, but if nobody knows about it, then it's the best idea kept secret. And so we were trying to get ourselves out there. So we joined boards, we went to networking events, went to the Chamber of Commerce stuff, all the stuff you would naturally do in a small town starting a business. And we met this guy, Jeff Krillman, and he wanted to build a website. And we knew we were good. We knew how to build a website. So we said, okay, well, why don't you come over to our office? And our office happened to be in our house. We had a 1,100 square foot house. We had 3 bedrooms. One of the bedrooms was dedicated to our son, who wasn't born yet, that we were pregnant. The other room that we had outside of our bedroom was a small, like 8-foot by 6-foot closet of an office.
Wow.
And we had one laptop that we did the work on, and we had one desktop, which was our server that we worked off of, but we traded off, right? So I would go out and sell during the day or join B, and Season would write because she was a copywriter. So she'd write all the content. And then at night, I'd work and build the websites, and then we'd wake up and do it over and over again. But we invited him over to our house, and, we brought him into this small little stuffy room, and he brought me a book. I can't remember the book, but he brought me a book, and it was like, the most successful brands or something like that, And at the time, we weren't doing brands. We were extending brands. We were really just building web experiences and user experiences. Okay. And I just remember, he trusted us, right? He knew that we had brought our whole selves. He knew we were passionate. He knew that we were going to commit and stick to our commitments. And he made us better, right? He made us better and I think no matter who it is, you're always going to have that first customer, and it's your job in that moment of time, I think, to not think about budget, to not think about profitability, to not think about anything other than being a servant leader, right? And to, you've committed, you're going to bring everything to it. You're going to produce the best work you can possibly produce. And then from there, you can start to learn to say no over time. The more clients you get and the more things you get and the more services you add or whatnot. And this could be for anything. You're going to start a restaurant. If it's your first pizza and it's for your first customer, you make that pizza with as much love as you can possibly make, because they're going to be a brand's definition is really the first experience they have, making sure it's good, the worst experience they have and making sure it's good, and the last experience they have and making sure it's good. And so when you have your very first customer, you've got to think about all of that, and it's got to be the best. You want your first customer to be the first paying customer, to have the best experience. You can practice on your family and friends if you're going to make pizza or whatnot to get it perfect before you go to market,
Yeah. So that's kind of a V attribution model.
Yes. Absolutely is. Yep.
Yeah. And when you started hiring overseas, was that challenging? Did you look for the same culture fit, the same kinds of things that you looked at for your employees? Because I know that the rules and the laws are also very different from country to country.
Yeah, they are. And I love that. I actually love that because we've made the U.S. company better from some of those laws and the ways of working in different countries. When we were looking at the UK and which office we were going to open, we said, well, why are we successful in Reno? We said, okay, well, it's a small university town, less than 350,000 people. Our proximity to the Bay Area was about 3 hours drive. So we started looking at these similar things. We said, well, Bristol is about a 3-hour drive from London, right? And it's a university town, and Bristol's a little bit closer towards being to the outdoors. So we knew that we're up in the Reno Tahoe area. We're close to the outdoors. And so we have access to that quality of life and, camping and everything so we thought, well, we want similar people because we knew how to communicate and we knew what the values that they would ultimately align. But to your point, they do run things differently. They are very, U.S. has been known pre-pandemic as the sort of workaholics, right? Only getting 2 weeks vacation a year and all that stuff. Over there, they get a lot more protected time. They have what's called bank holidays. They don't really work beyond a 40-hour work week, and they see us as that sort of workaholic culture. But what they love, though, they love the customer service culture that the U.S. brings. And it's really, truly unmatched. Now, maybe it's been tarnished since pandemic and everyone's job switched. And, so there's this new skill set that's kind of rising. But in general, the U.S. has been known for this amazing customer service. And so they love that aspect of it. And we wanted to teach that. We wanted to teach that it's important when you're working with a client to anticipate their needs, right? Put yourself in their shoes. And that's when you start to think about what makes a good customer service culture. We wanted to bring those sort of aspects and attributes to them, but then their protection of quality of life and, and all those other pieces, we wanted to bring some of that back over here to the U.S. And so now I am proud to say that both offices have very similar benefits, similar time off, similar holiday schedule and structure, all those things. And so now we've sort of homogenized, if you will, both cultures into one. And it's really something that's attracting team members to want to work for us over there.
Well, I'm sure, and over here as well.
Yes.
I'd love to talk about that because I do feel that some employers have more scarcity mindset, right? So they don't want to give their employees a lot of time off. They expect them to work overtime for a 40-hour pay.
Yes.
And they're not as willing to budge on those things because it sounds like you're overflowing with abundance in your business. You have amazing clients. You are able to attract the right team members, and you're finding that they're able to get the work done that they need to get done, even though they're getting maybe more vacation time, more breaks. You're really leaning into who they are and what they need at any one time.
Yeah. You know what? I think it really comes down to like giving a shit about people, right? I know that sounds crazy, but at the end of the day, when you feel like you belong at the place you belong at, you get work done faster, right? Decisions happen, and they're the right decisions, right? You don't have to dwell on, you're not living and operating in a place of fear. You don't bring things up late. You bring them up sooner. You recognize when before it's even a red flag, whether it's a client or this or a timeline issue, you bring those things up sooner because you feel safe to do that, and I think that goes back to this like deep, meaningful connections, right? People are the variable. We buy from people. We're inspired by people. Like all those pieces, I feel like by leaning into the team members, you actually get more out of them because they care about where they work and they want to do good work so that ideas come quicker and they're better, and, you don't avoid a conversation because your team member over here is scratchy and so you have that conversation quicker. And so that leads to things faster. And so what you find is at the end of the day, you can still be a profitable company, while still employing, team members and still giving them the quality of life. Now, not to say that in the agency world, we don't have late nights sometimes, we do. It's like working at a Michelin star restaurant. You don't just do 9 to 5s. Like you're bringing your whole self to work. So you are passionate. You don't mind staying up late and making a new dish, and because it's like a band, like, bands don't, work in 40-hour work weeks. They're singing their heart out, they're like working on the weekends. They don't see it as work though, right? They see it as like their life and where they want to, and they love to go home and steal the dinner conversation, I like to say all the time, because they're so excited about what they're working on that they suck all the oxygen out of the room talking about it, and so I think it's about caring about people and building those deep, meaningful connections. And even just before this show, we were talking with, a friend of mine, and him and I work well together, and we're talking about personal stuff and we're being genuine because we give a shit about each other, and it's like, how was your weekend? What are you going to be doing? What's your Monday going to look like? Because we take Earth Day off and, and it's like, but it's real. It's real. It's not forced. It's not unauthentic. And I think that people need this more today than ever. They need to feel like they can be honest and they can be safe and they can be vulnerable. And that alone, you have those ingredients, you create an environment for that, and you can do anything. And you can take us all to the moon, you could solve hopefully cancer or, whatever it is. But it takes people to feel like they can bring their whole selves together to really solve these problems and work together at the same mission and vision.
Wow. I love having conversations with you because we're so aligned.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, that it's always so rich, and I always take away so many gems. And now I do want to talk a little bit about the actual work that you do.
Yes.
Right. So who are some of the clients that you've worked with? And you talked about doing a number of different kinds of projects. I know the world it's very overwhelming, especially with new AI products coming out, AI consolidating, thousands and thousands of ad tech and MarTech companies. How do you navigate all of this? So I want to hear about a few of your clients, some case studies, if you don't mind. And then the other half is for people who are just starting out or who may be looking to revamp what tools they're using. Do you have any recommendations for courses they should look at? Or, is there LinkedIn Learning or a Google AI certification or just a tool that you think is something that they will be able to use for at least a period of time, not just something that's going to be, here today, gone tomorrow?
I love it. There's a lot to unpack there, so I'll do the best. If I get off track, you just keep me honest.
I'll probably get off track too.
Yeah, that's okay, right? Stream of consciousness. So those that are listening, or you're at the gym or anything like that, I'll take you on a little journey. So 20 years ago, when we started the company, there wasn't a lot of people doing digital marketing. And so it was really easy for us to get close to big brands. And so some of the bigger brands that we worked with in like, say, year 5 or so was like Beats by Dr. Dre. This was a really cool project. At the time we were building digital experiences, and there's an agency that came to us and said, look, we don't understand how to build some of these digital experiences, but we have these 2 artists, Eminem and Dr. Dre, and they're going to create this company called Beats by Dr. Dre. And we want you to build an Android app, because at the time it was open source and we were able to effectively, build this really cool algorithm that was an equalizer, and you can adjust the equalizer. And it was just a prototype, but you could adjust the equalizer with these headphones, and you can add more bass if you wanted to, or you could reduce the treble, and then you can load up different songs. And then based on the different types of song genres, we could then like have a preset that was built for each one of those genres. So, you're going to listen to country, maybe it turned into a little bit heavier treble. If you were going to listen to some R&B or rap or hip hop, it's going to be a little bit more heavy in bass. And it was just this really cool project. Of course, it was crunched in like 4 weeks. We were staying up late at night, Red Bull and Taco Bell, at the time. Now it's like salads and, kombucha. But at the time we were sitting there, crunching, and then we delivered it, and it happened to be at like the Chrysler Automobile Show where they featured it. And that was one of the big unveiling of the Beats by Dr. Dre headset. So that was like super awesome. Again, nobody was doing this kind of stuff at the time. The other one was just kind of recently, in a couple years ago, the Pokemon Go sort of phenomenon that happened, right? We helped build out the interface. We helped build out the website for it. We built all the different email activation templates and the landing page so when you go to download the app. And I just remember we were driving, Season and I and the kids, we were driving through Utah on a road trip. We had our tent trailer hooked to us, and we're going camping, like just seat of our pants. And I remember looked up and I see, you see those billboards that says like, don't drink and drive. And, sometimes there's like heat waves. And I see this sign that says, do not play Pokemon Go while you're driving. And I thought, oh my gosh. And at the time, we were like, oh my gosh, this is, we were docked out. We like, when we go on vacations, we like throw our phones in the glove box. Nice. And we're like, again, back to bringing our whole selves. We were like, let's just be 100% in the moment. And we're like, oh shit, that's us. And so of course we had to open the phone and look it up, and this thing just launched, and we just got all this, super success, and we're like, oh my gosh, it was so. And of course, you become desensitized by something like that right away. You immediately go to like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, oh my God, what do we do, and how do we help? And so those are some of the big names, right? But over the years, what we found, back to like people and like wanting to be around good people, is that sometimes working for these really large brands, it was sexy to work with them, but they weren't like the best to work with in terms of people. They were like a little bit cutthroat, and like really demanding, right? Well, they wanted that 5:00 Friday deliverable. And so instead we started attracting and moving towards like some of the travel and tourism, side of the business. And what we found is that if you think about travel and tourism, they're selling experiences, right? And they're selling memories, right? So we picked up like the islands of Tahiti, and we picked up Yosemite and Santa Monica, this beach town in Southern California. We picked up Lake Tahoe and the whole state of Nevada. And we just helped these destinations really promote these experiences that you can have and market and such. And so that helped draw, again, selling memories and experiences. Like, what better industry could you be in, But on top of that, we also work in the B2B side, which we love, because if you think about the B2B, it's what runs the world, right? It's behind the scenes. It's really running the world. And so we want to be, and they're very sophisticated, and they have really large buying committees. And so ultimately, that keeps our sort of weapons sharp, if you will, because there's no bullshit in that industry. Like, you got to perform and you got to do a good job. And so we love that because it keeps us sort of like on our toes. And then the things we get to cross-pollinate from both B2B and tourism goes back and forth. And each one, like, so we're bringing some of that humanizing elements from the travel and tourism side into the B2B space, because at the end of the day, they're the same humans. And then we're bringing some of that sophistication, that measurement, that conversion, that attribution modeling from the B2B side, we're bringing that into the travel and tourism space. And so, so those are some of the industries. And I know one of the other questions you asked was around tools and AI and the world that we're changing in, and where do you go to learn? And I think I go back to like what I was saying earlier. Google, is such a great place. YouTube, I mean, I'm not a mechanic. I'm a digital guy, but I was able to work with my son on our 1965 Ford Mustang, replacing parts and everything because of Google and YouTube. And it's like, thank you. So I would say the best way to embrace AI and the changes and the learning curve that you have to kind of stay up with is just be curious, right? Go out there and be curious and give yourself sort of micro projects. One of them that I did to get right away into AI and to learn how to use Midjourney and Dolly was, I'm in a photographer group. I love doing photography. I don't sell it for me. I just do it for me. It's just for me. I just want it to be like, I don't want it to have a work element to it. And so I have this group that we get together, and you can imagine it's every 6 weeks. We get on the phone, or Zoom, with our phones too. And we're sharing photos and this, and we're critiquing each other's work. And one project we had was macro photography. So I was like, well, I want to shoot these little cool, if you remember those growing up, they had these little desert horned lizards. They look like kind of dinosaurs, but they're tiny. And I was like, and they're real. And I'm in this desert looking for them. I can't find them. So I thought, well, shoot, I'm going to use Midjourney and I'm going to try to fake my photographer friends. I'm going to see if they'll recognize that this is an AI image. This is over a year ago. So I did. I prompted the hell out of it. I learned camera angles. I learned how to tell it what lenses to use. I wanted this little lizard to be next to a river and and then I got the image I wanted, and then I put it in the deck and I was presenting, and the guys that I was presenting to, their jaws dropped. They're like, how did you get that photo? And And I said, look, I'm not going to lie to you. It's AI. And they, you can't do that. So now there's a rule. We can't include any AI images. I ruined it for everyone. But my point is I needed a project to exercise that opportunity, right? And so anyone that's out there thinking of like, how do I even get started with, some of these tools that are there? First, start with an idea. And what does paint done look like, right? That's what Brene Brown always says. Like, what does paint done look like? I wanted a photo of this horned-toed lizard, and I wanted it to be at ground level, as if I was laying on my belly, taking a photo next to a river. I would ask the same thing of others. It's like, hey, if you want to figure out, like, maybe you want to create a business, a sustainable business, and you want it to be about recycling plastics from the ocean or something like that. Like, go into ChatGPT and start asking questions and get curious and think about what an end product might look like. Is you want to generate a business plan, and you maybe need to ask, like, well, how am I going to get money for it? So you're going to ask about investors, and then you're going to say, well, who's my audience? You're going to ask, and next thing you know, 3 hours later, you're going to be surprised with what you've generated. But it has to first start with an idea. Like, AI is just a tool. And if you just think of it as a tool and it's just going to get you faster to, sort of like your vision, then you're going to be successful with it. But don't be intimidated, I guess, is what I would say also about AI. It is a tool. It's only going to enhance your creative process. It's not going to replace your creative process.
Yeah. I have to do a call back to Pokemon Go because my sister, my brother, and one of my nieces play it nonstop. We can be at Legoland with the little nephews, and they will be walking around playing it and go on adventures. They'll come over to my house for something, and then they'll go on a walk in the neighborhood. So I don't play it, but yes, they're very into it, as even, people in age ranges from teens to 50 somethings. So that's amazing.
Well, my father-in-law, her father, he's almost 80 and he plays it and he literally is like obsessed. And what's so cool though, is that my daughter's 17. And probably for like 7 years now, they've had a bond. When he comes into town, they go to get ice cream and they stop at every intersection and and they play the game. And to your point, like if you do a Legoland or something, you get some really cool unlocks at those locations. So they'll oftentimes go to the water park or they'll go somewhere where they know there's cooler unlocks that can happen. But no, I just love that. That back to like connecting humans, and people together. It's just something that at the end of the day, it will be, and what we want our legacy to be is that we have affected people positively. We've given them experiences and we're making the world a better place,
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about AI and you talked about creating digital experiences like for Beats, right?
Yep.
What about AR and VR? Are you playing in that world? Are you looking at playing in that world? Is that something that you see is going to be the next necessity?
Yeah, back in the day, so everything kind of comes in waves, right? And so AR and VR, was 10 years ago. Now it's becoming more prevalent, with the Apple Vision Pro and things like that. We right now are with one of our clients, Travel Nevada. We're talking about doing because we're known in Nevada for having really dark skies. Now, right now we're in the middle of the project, so I can't reveal too much about it, but you'll get it right away. So we're going to be marketing, the way you market destinations, you usually market to locations that want to come to that destination. So we've identified a location that has a direct flight into Nevada, whether it's Las Vegas or Reno. Those are our two international airports. And they don't see the dark skies, right? So we have dark skies here and you see up to like 3,000 stars a night, right? Well, this location sees up to like 50 stars a night. So we want to do an exhibit where you come into this museum exhibit and you're looking up at this dome and you're actually seeing all of these stars. And we're saying that this was shot just last week, or this was shot 3 weeks ago or whatnot. And then of course that is going to like hopefully entice you to want to leave and come for a weekend or for a week stay or something like that. So that's a very, VR, AR experience, because you not only can do it by holding up your phone, but you can also do it by putting on a headset.
Right.
And then being in this like physical space. And so, so the short version is the challenge is that we want to be good stewards with our client and their money.
Right. Yeah.
And so as much as we want to like practice and do these things, we have to look at the other channels where that drives the most conversion. Mm-hmm. And so we have to just make sure, like, we can't put all of our budget in those types of experiences, but we can put a portion of the budgets while we offset maybe an underperforming channel, while still maintaining our more performing channel. Because at the end of the day, we do have KPIs, we do have results that we have to like report on, and that's how we get to renew our clients. And we have a long, sort of retention rate of clients, but it's only because we continue to like hit those KPIs and we keep increasing those KPIs. So we have to balance it. But yes, right now we are experimenting in it. It's a lot more affordable today than it was 10 years ago.
Right.
And I do see a lot more of these experiences on the rise.
Yeah, fantastic. One of my last questions. You said that you have internships. Are they virtual? Are they in person? Because I'm sure I have students who are looking for internships who are listening right now.
So the hard part about doing internships remotely is that you really need to be around people. You have to, like, you just swivel the chair and you have questions and stuff. It's not like leadership or skill set development by appointment. And so it's like every question, you don't want to start a new Zoom meeting and stuff. And so we've had students specifically over the summertime where they're willing to travel to one of our office locations, because when you can really attach yourself to someone and you can be in those meetings together and you can swivel those chairs and have those conversations and someone's over your shoulder looking at your work, usually is the best situation. However, that being said, depending on how independent you are, how communicative you are, how well you know the space, then we do offer remote internship opportunities. What we want is the student to walk away saying that was the best experience I could have ever had. And what we found is when you're physically together, you have a better experience than when you're virtually, because it's not just about the work, it's about the culture, right? It's about experiencing the ups and downs. And it's really hard to do that when you're sitting in a dorm room or in a coffee shop, or only checking in once a day, that kind of thing. So we want, again, people to really, really grow their skill sets. And by doing that, it's mostly in person. But yes, right now we're actually receiving a lot of internship applications because semesters are coming to a close. People are trying to figure out what their travel schedule is looking like for the summer. Sometimes we do a 3-week internship, so it's really short. Sometimes it's a full summer. Some of our best people that work with us today started out as interns, and they're now seniors or associate directors at our firm.
Oh, amazing. I'll definitely get more information from you to share. Do you have any final remarks that you want people to think about when they think about the world of work, when they think about these connections that we talked about, when we think about what we want our digital work and footprint to look like?
I think
in the future.
I think for anyone out there, again, I go back to life is short as we know it. Make sure you surround yourself with the right people that inspire you, that build you up, that support you, that you support them. Ask for advice. I always say when you ask for advice, you get money. And when you ask for money, you usually get advice, And so when effectively, it means be curious. If you ask for advice, you're going to see that there's so many opportunities that exist, but really, really, really surround yourself with positive people. The negative energy takes away from you. And like, you have one person is positive in a group, it might affect 3 people positively. You have one person who's negative in the group, it'll affect 10 people really, really quickly. So just be around positive people and be vulnerable and ask people to be more positive, or, be kind, not nice. We always say being nice is easy. Being kind is hard because it requires you to like really care for that other person and you want them to live their best life. So just go out there and be a good human. People are the variable. Let's all do this together. Like life is short, and help us heal the planet too. I mean, you're seeing that a lot, right? This is it's not just a trend. I don't like the greenwashing. Like, sustainability is on the rise. Like, we all have a part in that. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take this next generation and others to like really value those things and be the change agents for us to see the change in the world that we need to see. So
Jarrod Lopiccolo from Noble Studios, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned a lot. Even though I've had other conversations with you, I always learned something new, and it's really fantastic. And I really appreciate your outlook and how you're helping change the world of digital and the world of work, and really bringing your whole self to everything you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me be vulnerable and honest and
Of course.
even messing up a few times, but that's part of life, right? So thank you.
And this is the Digital Media Management Master's Program at USC's Mediascape Insights from Digital Changemakers. I'm one of your hosts, Annika Jackson, and I'll be back again with another amazing guest next week.
To learn more about the Master of Science in Digital Media Management program, visit us on the web at dmm.usc.edu.